Right, I'm just checking, waiting for us to go live. There we go. We've gone live on YouTube, Tom. Right, I'm
Excellent.
okay. Now we're up and running. What I'm going to do is start the program, Tom. Is just give me a minute to share my screen, and we should be up and running, and then we'll go live. Share my screen.
Daily percentage of test positive.
How's that, Tom? Can you see that?
I see you.
Excellent. Can you see my screen, everybody? I'm now live at the office, and hopefully we're on YouTube playing live. Uh, I hope that's working out. If we are, we're screen sharing, and God knows with the wonders of modern technology. But welcome to what we call is live at the TT office, Tom. Star Wars and A New Hope.
Good
Here we
morning, good
come.
evening.
Right, I'm going to start, Tom,
Yeah.
with hopefully we are going live. I've no idea if we are, but I've got our screen sharing and the wonders of modern technology. I hope we are, but I'm going to start with just here. First off, we went live today with the data on new comment on latest flu data. I just from Tom Goodfellow. Thanks, Tom. I love TTE, a bit of sanity in an otherwise mad world. I think that says it all about what we're out. I'm just going to show a couple of slides, Tom, and then ask for your comments. First is the data here, which we put out today. This is the influenza positivity by seasons. The black line there is the 24, 20, 25, 26, which is going up now to about nearly week 49.
Yep.
You've got a couple of grey lines to the right, which are post-COVID. And then to the left, you can see immediately influenza positive. Well, actually, there was 1 or 2 years, 29, 20, which were this positive preceded and was to the left of this line. So people are saying this is unprecedented flu, whatever that is, but this is influenza positivity is pretty much in line with other years, isn't it, Tom?
Well, there are several things I don't understand about this whole saga, as we've written. Quite apart from the use of the improper word, the F word flu. One of the things I don't understand is what the fuss is all about. Simply because this slide, which is governmental data, appears to show something which is on the rise and may have already peaked. We don't know, following Farr's law of epidemics. It's showing something which is on the rise, but it's, as you say, it's compared, it's within what you would expect for this time of the year. We know there is seasonality. We do not know why there is seasonality, but it is a firmly established fact, it's seasonality. So my answer is another question. What's the big deal? I don't understand.
Well, let's just move on to some of the other slides that we put out today, Tom.
All right.
At first, we put this data out, which is the weekly positivity
Yeah.
for influenza by age. You've got the up to 5 years, then the 5 to 14, 15 to 44, and then you go through right up above 80 and above. The blue line represents what's happening now. And as you
Yeah.
can see, the only group which sits above what we call the 5 year average is the 5 to 14-year-olds.
Schools. These are kids to go to school, children to go to school. Even if even the next age group, again, is what you would expect. I, I I just don't understand it. You can see the seasonal pattern is striking in all this.
Well, we'll
Uh,
come back to well, maybe the next slide's even better for this is
well,
the
there we go.
slide.
This hints at Farr's law of epidemics, which we have cooked in just every source in every post. Farr's law of epidemics, which is 150 years old, says that what goes up must come down, and this thing it looks as if it's just peaked. Now, of course, the admissions for if this is influenza, by the way, for real influenza, that is influenza A or B, RNA virus. If this is influenza, the admissions will lag in about 1 or 2 weeks before after this peak, and then they'll decrease.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of people, the comments in the news and the media are saying we can't see the end in sight. I
Yes.
mean, it's a bit like a Ferguson model prediction. It could be spring or summer before we see the peak. But I think this just looks exactly what the seasonal effect has looked like pretty much before. Okay, that line's a little to the left, maybe about 7 days.
So what?
Yeah, well, I'll come back to that because I think we've got
Yeah.
some interesting data later from Fleming. But then we've talked a little bit about the admission rate. So the first thing is this is the graph with influenza, but you can start to see other viruses. Your friend SARS-CoV-2 has disappeared there, Tom. But
SARS-CoV-2 is if this is to be believed, please, listeners, the audience must understand that these are government figures. We do not know how these tests were done, what tests they are. So let's just assume that all this is correct. And I think that's a fairly big assumption. But let's just say that it's big, that is correct. SARS-CoV-2 is an endemic virus, like all the others, and it comes and goes and does what the hell it wants. Missing from here is rhinovirus, which is the jack of all trades. That's always around in the background. RSV is going up, and they want us to believe that the vaccine will do something about it. And it doesn't look as if it's doing anything much. And look at influenza skyrocketing despite high coverage, like it's done for the last 20 years. So I'm unable to see, after 35 years of staring at this stuff, I'm unable to see anything which is remarkable about this.
so interestingly, this is the attendance rate at
Yeah,
primary care, isn't it? So
yeah,
on the left here is the estimated attendance rate per
yeah,
100,000. The rates here are probably about 180 per 100,000 for influenza,
yeah,
maybe about 50. So let's throw it all together, maybe 250 per
yeah.
100,000. Is that high, Tom? Or
No,
where's there is a
no.
rule of thumb from Fleming that
Yes,
can help us,
there's
isn't there?
there's a rule of thumb, which is of course is arbitrary, but at least it's recognized as arbitrary. There was a GP who has retired, but he ran the Royal College of General Practitioners surveillance scheme from Birmingham University. His name is or was, and I hope it's is still, Douglas Fleming. And he said, start worrying over 400 per 100,000. This is nowhere near it. And if this is influenza, of course, because I think we've shown that there are some questions about the tests, the reliability of the tests used. Douglas Fleming said, when you start getting 400 cases per 100,000 inhabitants, or in 100,000 people in your practice, in your group practice, start worrying. In your area, start worrying. But I can't see anything specific about this to be worried about.
So one interesting thing here is this is the is specific tests, influenza, RSV, and SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah.
You mentioned as we move to the next slide, we have at the office a campaign to get rid of the term flu or
Yes.
qualify what you mean. Now, at the moment in the surveillance data, there is these three. There's rhinovirus, which is about 14% positivity, and that's low for rhinovirus. It can go 25, 30%. In under fives, it's very high. But you've got other ones like parainfluenza, metapneumovirus,
Yeah.
adenovirus. You've got
Yeah.
influenza B. There's lots of different viruses.
Yeah.
Now, this goes into this next graph, which is come from the BBC, which starts with the word flu. Cases start at the record this high this winter. Now, I want to qualify this because it's got the term flu. We asked NHS England, tried to get some questions in to say what does that mean, because that's exactly what they record on their beds occupied data. They have a tab with they have go across the bottom. It's got beds occupied, adults, and critical care, but then it's got a tab which says flu. Now we have a problem because we don't know what that means.
Yeah.
When it says it's record high this winter, the term flu and the collection of that data only goes back to 2022, like it's got on there. So it's a record, but it's only a record in the last 3 to 4 winters. So it's slight again, it's one of these sleight of hand where people are playing on words. This is not a record high in any sense because nobody has a clue what they're talking about. And we have deep concerns that each hospital is counting things differently.
Um, Also, at some stage, they'd wrapped up norovirus in the term, the F word flu. Uh, and norovirus has got nothing to do with respiratory virus. It's an enterovirus. So really here, we don't know what we're looking at. It could be anything. As we have said as we've explained and on trustee evidence, the causes of these apparent acute respiratory infections, there could be 5 different causes. There could be quite different methods of transmission. We don't really know what we're looking at in here. And because it's coming from the BBC, I would be extremely careful with using these data. But it appears that our grandees are not careful with their words because they are really using intemperate language.
Yeah, I think the word like must wear a mask is really problematic. Can I ask you this important issue? I mean, this is predictable. We can expect the number of admissions with whatever you want to labor it, but
Yeah.
we know between summer and winter,
Yeah.
the number of respiratory attendance is double. Therefore, you should
Yeah.
expect the numbers to go up and be admitted. There are a couple of things we don't know which seriously are hampering our understanding. Number one, how many people were actually admitted with a diagnosis of influenza and the cause of their admission compared to those who may have caught it in hospital, or those who may have had a test positive but have come in for all sorts of other reasons,
Yeah.
had it weeks ago or months ago,
Yeah.
or have a co-infection, or have a bacterial complication. The list goes on and on.
Yes.
Now, we have all these people collating data, collecting it, huge numbers of people. We've got chief medical officers right, left, and centre. Not a single person seems to be able to say anything sensible on national TV or on the radio that says, look, we have a real incoherent problem with the data, and yet again, we're panicking because we haven't prepared properly.
2 observations on that. May I remind listeners that cancer, unfortunately, some forms of cancer kick off with symptoms and signs which are reminiscent of influenza-like illness. They then obviously develop in another way, but they kick off as an ILI. And that is something which doesn't appear, when you got something like flu cases. What do they mean by this? I could never make out whether they were deliberately confusing things or they're just ignorant. Because flu is a colloquial term which means absolutely nothing. And it's either influenza-like illness or acute respiratory infections, both of which terms have got problems, as we have explained and trust the evidence, but they're slightly more accurate than the word flu, which could mean anything and everything. This could be stress. It could be stress related from the campaign of terror that they've unleashed on the population. It could be stress related. We've also reported on episodes of that. There are studies showing that stress and indoor environment and indoor pollution are associated with this kind of symptoms. So this is just meaningless. We
So I
don't know.
want to come again to, and I'm going to explain a couple of slides and just,
Okay.
this is what they call the SIT reports, beds occupied by flu patients in England. Now, what you can see is going up in 24th of November, the first one here, probably about 1350, 1400, and now it's gone above 2,500, and this is where everybody's panicking. But this is the issue about, and I'll wait to get to the next slide, but what's happening here is people are coming into hospital, they could be admitted, they could already be in hospital. The problem is they could have been in hospital for a month. They could be elderly. You can't get them out. So they sit in hospital in this number, despite the fact they could be there for 8 weeks. So this number It's pretty misleading, really, in terms of trying to interpret what's happening. It means you've got somebody in a bed who at some point had a label of flu by somebody, but nobody can explain what that means and what it does in terms of their diagnosis. One of the things we do is watch this rate of change, which is important. And actually, if you look at this rate of change, the fact you can't get people out the back end, the fact you're labeling more and more people suggests that at the moment, this is pretty much doing what it did. You can see there something happens on the 30th of November. Is that some bias where everybody says, oh, it's in the news, let's report all our patients have flu? There's weird things happen in the data. But here to the right, you can see, in fact, below the line, it means
Yeah,
you've got less emissions.
yeah.
Now, this fits exactly with what we're seeing in the department's syndromic surveillance is it's remained above seasonally expected levels. However, the increase was less steep than seen in previous weeks, and there was a slight decrease in children aged 5 to 14. Attendances for ILI also continued to increase nationally and remained above seasonally expected levels, though they were stable in children. And so we've got widespread panic at the moment. It seems there are other issues at play, particularly the lack of preparation. We've got the strikes coming up, but we don't get the same sense of panic across other European countries, do
No,
we,
we
Tom?
don't. No, we don't. As readers know, I live in Italy, and the big center of attention now is the fact that Italian cuisine has achieved a UNESCO status. It's not a dish; it's the whole cuisine, and that's taken up the. And the other one that a crook was being chased by the police hid as one of the figures in a nativity scene, and he donned the costume and hid in this nativity scene and nearly got away until the police got him. So this is the kind of the British typical British phenomenon. Can I go back to the previous slide about hospitalizations, Carl?
Yeah.
Because that is important. I need to remind our readers, long-time readers, that COVID hospitalizations for COVID and for COVID because of COVID or whatever, up to 40% of those were in people who were admitted to hospital for completely different reasons, who were negative on testing and turned positive 8 or more days afterwards. In other words, they were hospital acquired infections. Now, we've been through the plans for the UK scare agency for next year, 25-26, and we looked in vain for the word hospital acquired infections. So it would appear that nobody's interested in these, which in any way are a big source of presumably death, and they're a big source of infection. So my question to you is, what the devil is going on?
Well, I'm going to finish, Tom. I think this has been hugely interesting, and it's still interesting to us. I'm going to put this slide up, which is from Douglas Fleming, which is in published in 2007, which is the RCGP surveillance data.
Yeah,
Across the bottom there, you can see data goes back to 1967-68.
yeah.
Uh,
Which
uh,
is
not
the year afterwards, 60, 68, 69 was the second pandemic. The
Yeah,
third,
there you go at the top there. You can see it.
yeah,
What this highlights is
yeah,
all the AH3. So that's influenza H3. And what he's highlighting there is that the H3 seems to give an incident rate that gives rise to more symptomatic disease. And you can see there, incidence rate for the Hong Kong 1968-69 winter around about there was 700 cases per 100,000. It seemed to show a regular interval, but this is the interesting thing about this stuff. What happened between 1978-79 to 1990? Things abated and disappeared for a bit, and then they came back, and now they sort of filtered away. And then by 2008-9, we started to see the re-emergence again. And so these things seem to have a life of their own, but they don't, because like you can see the seasonal peaks there, the size of the peak changes. But interestingly, there must be other factors at play that influence the size and severity of this peak. and how it comes and goes, which we don't really understand. But we've been in the transmission riddle trying to understand a whole host of factors, whether they're environmental, your the population, all sorts of features and factors that influence this appearance. But my point was also to say is, folks, nothing is a record out there when you understand where the record exists. And you can go back for H3, and all of these four early ones all peaked before Christmas as well. So that's interesting and it's all right. The other ones, the slightly small ones, were after Christmas. Interesting in its own right. It isn't a record. This is the record if you want to understand the whole data. Do you have any final thoughts on that, Tom?
Um, I would say that this tells you the story, the seasonality story, where I remind our listeners that viruses are not living beings; they are things, like a pen or a desk. And what probably really, if they do transmit, and we've given several different hypotheses of how this could happen. If they do transmit, is probably that our behavior has something to do with it, as well as meteorology or local conditions. Because viruses cannot behave any more than a desk or a pen can behave.
So, Tom, I think the bit, if we just go back to one slide, it's this
Yeah.
slide. Um, what's going to happen next then? Where's your crystal ball modeling day,
Well,
stargazing?
yeah. Neil Ferguson has just lent me his.
Okay.
I think that what we're looking at is at the beginning of Farr's downward curve for 2026, 2025, 2026. I may be wrong. It may be just a temporary hiatus, but I think it's probably going to start coming down. And in about a month's time, no one will remember any of this. It will not be investigated. The so-called NHS winter crisis will never be investigated. There are no studies that understand what on earth happens, and that itself begs a question. Now we've got possible explanations for all this recurring phenomenon in a post coming out on Sunday. Yes, on Sunday, I know it's it'll make several people angry to read it, but I'm afraid that's the nature of evidence.
Well, look, for those who've been watching, I realize there have been some people watching live on YouTube. Sorry about the delay. We are two old geezers. Technical things are a bit difficult. We have to get our head round how to go about this. But I can tell you, it's live at the TTE office. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye for him.
Thank you very much for listening.